Hello and welcome to the Kundalini podcast. That was Zen. This is Tao. I'm Vivek Govekar. Namaste. This is episode 115. And today I'm going to talk about a topic that I have discussed before briefly in the earliest episodes, which is about black magic and dark forces. And back then I gave the answer of Kundalini not being black magic. Back then, I thought that's what people meant about black magic and dark forces. And the question in my mind, or I thought the question in their mind was, is Kundalini a dark force? And, I explained in that video that that is not the case. Kundalini is the highest good. How a person uses it is up to them after they have an awakening. But most likely, if you don't use it the right way, you're going to get consequences that are pretty bad. And it will block your further ascendance, further spiritual progress, because you try to use it in a harmful way. Right there. The way it works is your ego that is being dissolved by this energy. As it goes away and the past trauma that's stuck inside your nadis goes away, higher powers are immediately revealed. So you have slightly more advanced knowledge of a bunch of things. Like I mentioned in the last episode, it gives you advanced knowledge of things like the golden ratio and musical octaves. So I had to make sure that I mentioned that if you start using it for harmful purposes because of the promptings of your ego, obviously that is antithetical. That is the opposite of clearing blockages. You're creating more blockages with more bad karma. Right now, because you have powers, and part of your ego is left, which kind of makes you tempted to use it that way, right? But pretty soon you realize, even if you're just like, oh, let me test this out, I have this ability now, or this talent. And even the slightest thing done for bad purposes, however you identify bad, driven by the ego, to show off to people, to take revenge on someone, just to do mischief, those kind of things, immediately puts your Kundalini ascension process that is going on in the background, sets it back. And you have to gain that footing again. And that doesn't feel good. Obviously now the energy is not flowing the right way, smoothly through you. As I have mentioned in other videos, the attempts that you make to make it smoother are inevitably the same attempts that are used to remove the ego. More of God, less of myself. More of God, less of the ego. And witnessing, watching what is happening and letting the process take over. Instead, now what you have done is taken the time to say, oh, I have this, I have that. Who's the I? Inevitably, that's the ego. Who gets so fascinated and full of themselves? The ego, not the self. And you decide, let me go and use that energy for something like this. Obviously, that time spent is not spent aligning with God, aligning with the process, witnessing. You're actively involved in doing something. And now you have to worry whether those actions are good karma or bad karma, bringing more of the good karma rewards to you or bad karma rewards to you. But initially, of course, as you're awakening, you are not aware of any of these things and you're still feeling your way about and trying to discover what's going on. So initially you could be forgiven. If you have found it out 2 or 3 times that using these forces the wrong way leads to my own personal progress not going as planned and as fast as it could have, immediately wants like yourself to stop it. Like you're like, oh, okay, I shouldn't be doing these things. So that was my answer to the black magic question the last time it was asked. However, I thought it necessary in this episode 115 to talk about this topic once more. And the reason for that is very different. It is not whether the Kundalini energy is a dark energy or not, or can be used for those purposes. But when you awaken the Kundalini energy, you become aware of other forces that are already operational in the world. And that may be from people who are unscrupulous and don't have your best interest at heart, let's say, or actively trying to harm you and to hurt your process. And I'm going to devote this the rest of the episode to that. I found out, without going into the details, that there are strong users of these dark energies, and they affect or try to influence the awakening. Now, there are some good things about the awakening. One of them is that it is so powerful and so aligned to the divine that there is nothing more powerful than this energy. However, dark forces just want to do harm. They don't care whether their karma is bad because of that, and in the future what they will get. They have learned to use dark forces, and they want to do you some harm. So it's immediate. So I thought I'd talk about how to identify those things and how to prevent those things once you've had an awakening. This might apply to people who have not had an awakening as well. Try it out, see if it works, and it's up to you to use it or not use it. But this is the attempt in this episode to kind of inform you of what I went through and how I countered it successfully and what things help. First and foremost, these evil energies work through fear, intimidation, causing jealousy in you, making you feel some lack, gaslighting you, putting you down, and those kind of forces brought in your life in a systematic way. That's how they work. It's like working on your psyche, on yourself, to make you feel less than who you are. Okay. The last time when I made an episode about energy vampires, I was making that episode exactly as I had a fight with my ex. And I thought, let me just make a video out of this. So I had made a habit back then of any negative experience to transmute it from the prism of the Kundalini awakening and explain it to people. And now I go back and see that Energy Vampires episode anytime I need to. But if I had not had that negative encounter, I wouldn't have made that episode. In the same way, if I had not had these encounters that I'm talking about, I wouldn't have been able to make this episode. So what am I talking about? As I mentioned, these things brought into your life, specifically to hurt you or harm you. One thing I learned from a energy method from somebody who knew about these things, Reiki, Tao, auras, etc. You look above the head of that person, right here, above here. And I see the aura. Some people might not be able to see the aura, but just see right here. Point your gaze at that, take all of your intention and say cut, cut, cut. And imagine a cord being cut from that person's head to your head and to your aura. And furthermore, you can say, you do not influence me at all. And repeat that 2 or 3 times to that person, or whatever words you need to use. But cut, cut, cut is the easiest. And then the energetic transfer from that person and their intention is not going to happen. You have chosen to refuse. Now, whatever words those people are saying after that, and the communication may go on, but its effect and your intention and focus has been taken away. I found this to be miraculous. Works right away. When you get that suspicion that this person is trying to influence you in a bad way, and sounds negative, makes you uneasy, miserable, uncomfortable, whatever it is. So you could walk away, but even before you walk away, I would suggest you do this. Cut that cord, energetic cord from their aura to yours, and choose not to receive that. Very effective. The other thing I do is the alternate nostril breathing, which takes away all that junk that has been thrown your way verbally, and don't allow it to be absorbed, because the alternate nostril breathing rids you of that thought chain. I'm constantly listening to mantras, but if you aren't in the habit of listening to mantras or chanting them, after one of these encounters, you should immediately cleanse yourself by chanting the mantra. So you've done the alternate nostril breathing, you have looked above their head and cut those energy cords, and you are chanting a mantra. All these 3 things have prevented further harm from happening. And what am I talking about? What further harm? Well, suppose somebody is very strong at convincing people through their words and has put thoughts of harm into that person, knowing this is going to be, they're going to be susceptible to that. That person is vulnerable to this, so let me mention that. In an attempt to, play some mischief and make you be more fearful. Then that stops working with these methods. Simple things. So if you thought that you had no control over somebody trying to implant some thoughts in your head, that is wrong. You have a lot of control. But you have to do it through mindfulness, meditation, as your training, as your practice. Like, somebody who does boxing in a ring has trained outside the ring for hours and hours and hours and practiced before stepping in the ring. That way, your outside practice is mindfulness, meditation, and being able to separate your thoughts by witnessing them and not allowing a new suggestion to attach to your mind, and being able to have that much strength inside to be witnessing outside things at all times. Without that practice, what I'm about to tell you, you may be able to do those things, but they won't be as effective. But you can only get better by practicing them. So don't start with the belief of thinking, whatever he's saying, this seems like too much mumbo jumbo. What do you mean, look above the head? If you have any doubts in your mind, okay, don't do those practices. But hey, these have worked for me post Kundalini awakening. There were many things I didn't believe as a scientist either. But after the Kundalini awakening, when you have to find self-defense mechanisms to protect your aura and your process, you have to. If you live in a bad neighborhood and learn martial arts, because you have to. You weren't a fan of the martial arts. You just chose the wrong neighborhood by whatever reason. And now you have to learn them just to be safe and be able to walk around that neighborhood. And now you feel safe and confident because now you have the training. That's what I'm talking about. It's not about whether you believe or not. This method works, as experienced by somebody going through a Kundalini awakening. So look above their head, cut cords, cut. Imagine that, visualize that cord being cut, not absorbing any information. It's about your intent. And when you say stop, things stop penetrating because everything in your mind, your mechanism, has taken that stop approach. And that is important. Like I've said before, it is important to open a circuit of gratitude to God. Say thank you, God. It is important to open a circuit and realize what you have in that moment that is so precious. And thank God for that, whatever you have. But you make the intentional step, that action of opening that. In the same way, you can do that with shutting yourself away from situations and people and events that are not conducive to your well-being, your harmony, your equanimity, that have a negative impact on your psyche, might implant a suggestion that makes you worried, stressed, angry, or agitates you in any way. But fortunately, your training has been done well. You have done the right methods. Meditation and mindfulness is strong. Your mindfulness practice is immediate. You pick up that vibe from the person. You take that action of cutting the cord. Then when you're away from that situation, you reassess it and make sure you say the right mantras. Put on the Devi Kavach mantra. And the more practice you put in, using these methods in your spare time, the better you are at dealing with it in the moment. It's like the Star Trek analogy of shields up. In Star Trek, one of the engineering people would tell the captain, shields down 30%, captain, after an encounter with an alien being that fires something at them. It's the same way. How many times have you done the Devi Kavach otherwise, outside of that critical situation? And how strong is your mindfulness and meditation practice? That will decide that, one of these days when you encounter something unpleasant that you want to put an end to, how strong will your response be? How strong will your intention be? And how effectively you will be able to bring a thought chain to your attention and then drive it out of your mind. Will decide. It will be decided by how much practice you have put in, building up to that moment. And then for a while you might not be so strong. All these events, all these messages that you receive might be able to incapacitate you for a little while. But hey, at least you trained. And in the past you weren't training. And that will help you. I hope you found this helpful. This is Vivek Kovekar signing off. Peace, love, blessings. Viva.